Good morning, everyone. My name is Tony Richardson. I'm a certified information system security professional. I'm also studying at the university at present for my master's in cyber security. If there are any security professionals in the room, you may be somewhat disappointed with the next 45 minutes or so, and if you're of a particularly highly technical background again. I'd also say that if you were listening to Tony Dyehouse a short while ago, he stole quite a bit of my thunder, but nonetheless we will continue. There's my details. I'll put them back up at the end, and if there are any questions, if I haven't answered anything in the time allotted, then by all means drop me an email. I'll happily try and answer any questions you may have. If I can't do them today, then certainly an email will get a response. In 2008, the FSA published a... Well, you're right. In 2008, the FSA published a scathing report on data security within financial services. And you might ask what financial services has got to do with today's presentation. But nonetheless, in my experience of working with SMEs, the report actually is relevant across the board as far as any industry sector is concerned. And I just wanted to share with you some of the points. The report suggested that many firms are failing to identify all aspects of the data security risk they face for three main reasons. First, some do not appreciate the gravity of this risk. Second, some do not have the expertise to make a reasonable assessment of key risk factors and devise ways of mitigating them. And third, many fail to devote or coordinate adequate resources to address this risk. In some medium-sized and small firms, there is a lack of awareness that customer data is a valuable commodity for criminals, and as a consequence, systems and controls are often weak and sometimes absent. And this was a response by Richard Thomas, the then Information Commissioner. And again, he's made it quite clear that it's applicable to all organisations, not just those within financial services. It just happens that the financial services sector is the most regulated industry as far as we're concerned. We're all aware of some of the high-profile security breaches that have occurred. Tony Dyehouse mentioned the Sony PlayStation breach, where 70 million records were disclosed. HMRC losing 25 million records on 2 CDs. We've heard about WikiLeaks. I'm sure are we all familiar with these incidents? And as a result, in April 2010, the Information Commissioner's Office was granted new powers of enforcement, and they can now impose fines of up to £500,000 on organisations that recklessly or negligently lose personally identifiable information. That was previously £5,000 maximum penalty. In 2011, mandatory breach disclosure was imposed on the telecommunications sector, and there's now moves afoot, particularly within the EU, to impose mandatory breach disclosure across the board. If you lose data, you will have to notify the ICO and any entity that may well be affected by that material breach. So, some of the legal and regulatory mandates that we may have to comply with. The Data Protection Act. How many of us hold a data protection licence? Nobody? Well, and you know why you've got a data protection licence. PCI DSS. Does anyone process credit card payments? The Computer Misuse Act, and obviously, as I said, the ICO with their increased powers of enforcement. So moving on. The fundamental process of any information security management system has to start with a risk assessment. Now, my definition of risk is the likelihood of a threat exploiting a vulnerability within an information asset that will impact on your business. In terms of risk assessment, how many of us actually identify all of our information assets? Do we know where our information is stored? Does anyone carry out any risk assessment? Yeah? Do you know what the threats are to those assets? Tony Dias again, he mentioned some of the potential threats like script kiddies, hacktivists and whatever. But the biggest security threat generally is an internal one, whether it be malicious or accidental. Determining the possible vulnerabilities in those assets. It's not easy, but again, if we try and ensure that our patch management is in place and consider and deploy the necessary countermeasures. Having carried out your risk assessment, we then need to develop a security policy. And that policy needs to be endorsed by senior management. It has to be available to absolutely everybody within the organisation. It has to be understandable, and it certainly has to be agreed by them. Try and avoid ambiguity and establish the agreed roles and responsibilities. A corporate policy should set out a statement of intent as far as the organisation is concerned. Beyond that, let's look at additional policies. An acceptable use policy. Do you actually control what people can access on the internet? Do you control their email? Do you control it at the moment? No? He mentioned training and awareness as well, making everybody aware of the risks, developing an interesting way of communicating what those potential risks are through innovative training programs, simple wall posters, screensavers, and carry out regular reviews. It should be made part of the recruitment process. When you're engaging somebody, then part of that recruitment process should be some form of security awareness training. Again, Tony Dias mentioned this morning about firewalls, antivirus and anti-spyware software. If we haven't got these in place and they're not properly configured, then you've got fundamental problems from the outset. Again, it's all to do with the patching side of things as well. On malware these days is designed specifically to exploit known and unknown vulnerabilities, your zero-day vulnerabilities. Passwords. Probably the easiest way to exploit a system. In December 2009, there was a US website called RockQ, a social networking site. And as a result of the breach, 32 million user accounts were exposed, including all of their passwords. And a subsequent study revealed that almost 50% of the passwords employed were just symbol names, number strings, and Can anyone guess what the most common password was? Actually, password was number 4. Number 1 was 123456. Number 2 was 123455. Number 3 was 1234567889. Number 5 was I love you. Number 6 princess. Number 7 rock you. Number 8 12345677. Number 9 12345678. And 10, far more cryptic, was ABC 123. And at this stage, I normally hand out a form to get people to fill in to do a password complexity analysis. And I handed out I was talking to a group of IFAs, about 20 IFAs, and I gave this form out, and it had username, password, email address, and they all started filling it in and gave it back to me. We sort of defeated the object somewhat of having a password in the first place.
Can I add a couple of things to that?
Yes, you can.
In there. I'm going to do the cruel one in a second, which is about writing them down. But the thing you've missed off there is about reusing passwords. And we've noticed recently, going back to the previous talk about the null sets and the anonymous attacks, they have been harvesting usernames and passwords from site A, site B, site C.
Yes.
And aggregating all that information together. So if I'm Andy@example.com and I've used password 123 as my password, the next time when they go into a site, they will use my ID and that password, and they're getting footholds on those systems, and then from those systems they're aggregating all the information together, which then means you can't reuse a password across 2 separate systems. Here comes the cruel bit. I've done it to myself, by the way. So to demonstrate how difficult this was to myself and to others, I went through every single password and said, right, if I have been compromised, what am I going to do right now? I'm going to have to change every single one of my passwords. And yeah, some of them were reused. 58 passwords later for online connections, I'm going, I have to write these down. And the industry, which I see myself as part of, aren't really helping the general public by saying don't write them down.
Because if you don't write them down, you put them in an Excel spreadsheet on your computer.
Yeah, genius. I can think of that. So
passwords. I use
cool passwords.
Norman, the 2011, and part of that I use the identity safe on it. How secure is that?
I can't comment on specific products.
What's obviously just crossing my mind now is if somebody got into my Norton account,
you've got the credentials in there.
they have all passwords using it.
Well, if your system was compromised and then you then access your password information, then I'm sure it's then available to whoever has actually compromised your system.
And that's why I feel that we're letting people down in the industry by saying this is all good practice. When you actually get someone with a couple of beers inside them, to be honest, they go, well, you work in an environment that has a 12-character password, and it has to be, that first example is a good example. How the dickheads am I going to remember that?
One of the security vendors does actually advocate writing them down. If you've got it written down somewhere that is secure,
Yes.
define a secure location, I suppose. If it's in your wallet or only accessible by you, then that's probably secure.
I'm thinking along the lines of like giving all my staff different usernames and passwords, change them each month, and keep the prints out of them in the safe.
That's one. I wouldn't change them every month. I mean, you'll just create a headache for yourself. I mean, passwords are the bane of any support desk. People forgetting passwords.
Because, I mean, by definition, when it says on the rule, it says identity safe, does it imply that your logins are safe, or it's a safe to keep your identity logins in?
I would think it's more safe to keep your identity logins in, whether you're logging in identity safe.
Computer. So once somebody's in, gets into that, they're into everything.
Yeah.
So it's actually not a very good idea.
No.
I don't know, you're going to touch on 2-factor authentication?
I wasn't going to touch on two-factor authentication, however, it depends what industry you're in. I mean, you can take security to the nth degree, and again...
I advocate it for ease of use. The point is, if I've got something I own,
yeah,
the usual paradigm we use, then the onus on the password has been taken off slightly. The pressure on actually having that password management as, dare I say, draconian or complex is lessened. Not to a great degree.
Yeah. Are you all familiar with two-factor authentication, the concept of two-factor authentication? It's taking two elements of something you know, your password, something you have, which would be a token, like a smart card, and something you are, so that would be biometrics, whether it be a fingerprint or an iris scan, retina scan. It can be costly. However, there's a number of cloud-based security services now. We use a solution from CryptoCard called CryptoMass, which is again a subscription-based service. There's no capital outlay. I think it's pretty cheap as well, something like £3 or £4 a month per user. And you can have it tokenless as well, so it's actually a passcode sent to a mobile phone.
For a business, that's quite useful.
It's extremely useful if you've got an awful lot of remote access, for example, then, and access to highly confidential information, then two-factor authentication I'd certainly advocate.
I looked at this cloud computing, and one of the concerns I had is that if somebody, say, hacks into my computer, they get my data. If somebody hacks into one of these cloud computing providers, do they therefore get everybody's data off that? Because obviously they're a big data store.
We're moving into a different a different topic altogether. Yeah, cloud computing is an all of these principles apply to a cloud computing environment. We all love this word cloud, but at the end of the day, all it is it's a server stored somewhere else. And therefore, all of these principles have to be applied by your service provider if you're outsourcing everything. I'd like to think that small businesses who are looking to take advantage of the cloud are moving into a more secure environment, because that third-party provider would have invested an awful lot of money and resources into providing a secure infrastructure. However, there is one caveat to cloud computing for small businesses, and that is the reliability of your broadband connection for a start. We can't all afford lease lines, and
I'd go along with that thought until you take into account the likes of HMRC using 25 million people's data. I would sort of like just...
well, that was actually...
HMRC being a rather big organisation would have taken steps.
Well, that was a procedural issue where somebody unqualified just put the records on 2 CDs and stuck them in the post.
Which is the whole weakness in it, isn't it?
And we come back to people, yeah. Training and awareness. I'm glad this is a bit more interactive. It makes it a lot more comfortable for me, I'll tell you. Email security. None of you said that you actually filter your email? So are you getting a lot of spam? Phishing attacks?
Low spam, predominantly throughout it goes.
From where, sorry?
At Microsoft Exchange. It's noticeable to the extreme. We're about 15 email addresses in operation, and you get a little bit on all the others, which are through our own domain.
Yeah.
Server. But the one email address that's going through Microsoft Exchange, since it's gone on Microsoft Exchange, it's absolutely hammered with spam.
These phishing attacks are so successful. It's estimated that 1 in 20 people do actually respond to putting in things like their banking credentials online. I mean, it beggars belief. And the banks, well, they actually send you an email saying that they won't send you an email, don't they?
I had a classic one, I think I've still got it. Maybe you mentioned it. I just kept it and I sent it to our IT people because it was an email from, I forget the exact details, but it was like, I'mAnIdiot.com. And and it says your computer may be infected, click this link. And then the link was mycomputerhascrashed.com. And I'm just interested in how many people would actually click it.
Actually, getting back to passwords and password complexity, if you go to, there's a site called howsecureismypassword.net, and it estimates how long it would take to crack your password. Now, it did actually dawn on me though, that when you're typing in your password, are they recording it? But anyway, nonetheless, it will tell you in terms of number of hours computing time.
That's the concern I've got about Norton, because you open an account in Norton.
Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist like myself, aren't you?
Well, if somebody gets into Norton's server, I know they're an internet security company.
Also RSA, but they were hacked.
Okay, how many passwords on how many computers and how many businesses are they accessing now?
This is why they need changing regularly. If it's just static data, then eventually your systems will be compromised. I'm looking after a company at the moment. Again, something that Tony Dias, I should really cover this in the recruitment side of things. But this is a technology company that I'm looking after who employ 40 people, yet they've got 112 accounts active in their Active Directory on their domain controller. And so all of these employees that have come and gone have still got live accounts, their passwords aren't changed, and I mean, it's a schoolboy error really. Physical security. Well, if someone can walk in and just take what they want from your network, it doesn't matter how much technology you throw at security. Servers should be locked away. Again, I've been to places, some of these managed office environments, and they'll have servers just in public access areas. It really is quite frightening.
I think it's important on that one, actually it covers this one as well, the backup. It's a bit more conspicuous walking out the door with a server than with a backup disk or tape, and yet the same information is often on the tape.
Yeah, I mean, if I walked in wearing this shirt and just started helping myself to equipment, you'd probably assume that I was authorised to be doing it. And human nature suggests that we rarely challenge people who've come into your offices because they must be there for a valid reason. This is another one that, like passwords, probably takes a fair amount of time to get through. We'll run backups, I assume. How many have tried restoring from them? Yeah, you carry on, you carry on. This is great for me.
If you get questions, we use LiveDrive. Going back to the security thing here, are these online backups secure?
You're relying on a third party, and they're telling you that it's encrypted using AES 256-bit encryption. It does mean that they'll be able to access it because they'll be managing the keys, I would imagine. And whoever in your organisation has access to that backup. How do you control that? It's such a tricky one. Only authorised personnel should have access to backup media. It's the same with an online service. Only authorised people should be able to access that backup. It's a known fact, actually, talking about backups. According to the London Chamber of Commerce, it says here that 90% of all companies that suffer a major data loss go out of business within 2 years. And there seems to be a very blasé approach to backups because people just assume that their servers won't crash on them. Someone won't be stupid enough to delete that confidential file. The fact that media should be taken off site. Yeah. Well, then we can talk about business continuity as well. That's
There's an interesting difference between backup, I don't think you'll touch on backup and archive as well, and drawing a distinction between the two.
Yeah.
So that if I need to go back to my business's records of 5 years ago,
That should be archived.
That's archived.
Yeah.
But grandfather, father, son, that paradigm that we use for backing up discs, well, if it got deleted 3 months ago, the chances are it's no longer on any of the backup tapes. So from an accountability point of view, it's not really business continuity, it's accountability over commercial records and corporate records. Archives are a subtly different challenge than backups. And everyone thinks backup, stick the tape, stick the CD in the drive. But actually, if I go and delete it on Friday and I forget I deleted it, then the backups I deleted are not backing it up anymore.
I mean, in certain industries, records have to be archived for, I mean, in financial services, it's 20 years, isn't it, I think?
And some of them is great, I think. It's huge.
Also, we found a lot of backups, when you subscribe to a backup system, they're very hit and miss. We currently use this live drive, basically because it's currently, whatever you do on it is instantly backed up.
Yeah.
So it's constantly whatever the last, write a letter on the computer and it goes instantly backed up. We used Barclays for a while until we tried to restore from it, and it took me a week. The reason being is that the Barclays system is just backing everything up every 24 hours again. So there were multiple duplicates of the same thing. And we've got like 48 gigabytes of data. But when you come to download to restore, it will only allow you to do it in 1.7 megabytes at a time. Which means it's absolutely ridiculous. You can't just press a button and it restores back in. You've got to literally
Well, we're
download 1.7 megabytes and then extract the file.
yeah.
But they don't tell you that when you subscribe to it.
No, they don't. And it's costly. I mean, online storage is becoming cheaper and cheaper, but once you're in the realms of several gigabytes, even terabytes, then it's very costly. I still use tape.
There's different grades of backups out there, which people don't seem to identify yet. That one is good and that one is a bad one. What you get for your money.
It's horses for courses, but from a best practices approach, regular backups, regular testing, restore, keep the data, keep the media off-site, apply the the son, father, grandfather approach, whereby you'll have daily, weekly, monthly, annual backups, and just make sure they are accessible. Access control. Talking about the company I just mentioned before. Do you regularly review user permissions? Who has access to what? You go into most small businesses and they'll have a public folder. And everything will just be stored in a public folder, and every employee will have read, write, execute permissions on those folders. There's no data classification. And like, as I say, as far as ex-employees are concerned, they'll have exactly the same rights. Worse still, they might still have remote access as well.
Case in point, which I can't name the company.
Oh, go on.
And it was had a large installation over in Wales. On a Friday, the assistant administrator was formally dismissed because he'd gone through the warnings about whatever it was, that's not important. He then had 48 hours with remote access laptop to do everything on every server. Stopping the backups as well. And Friday and Monday morning, everyone comes in and absolutely every machine on the whole network was dead. Please don't put that on.
Well, oil giant Royal Dutch Shell had a database containing the contact details of 170,000 workers emailed to campaigning groups opposed to the company's activities. And that was by employees who had access to the wrong information. The database contained names, telephone numbers, and further details on permanent and contract employees. A lengthy letter was attached to the database purporting to be from more than 100 Shell staff. WikiLeaks. So WikiLeaks is a great example of people having access to the wrong confidential information. Bradley Manning, I'm sure you're all aware of this story. He released, I think, 250,000 emails, was it, to WikiLeaks? Most of which were not particularly damaging, apart from the fact they were sort of rather embarrassing discussions about heads of state and in various nations, mostly Britain, I think. Data transfer. Well, we all use USB sticks, I guess. Yeah? CDs? Hands up who's lost a USB stick. Don't tell me I'm the only one in here that's lost a USB stick.
And he wants us to trust it.
I tend to do with a USB stick is to use it like basically to move data from one place to another. Once I've moved it, I tend to format it.
Yeah.
So keep the USB stick empty.
You're almost unique, I would imagine, in that respect. I mean, they're so cheap as well. I mean, £3 or £4 for, what, 16 gigabytes now? I mean, they store as much as a hard drive.
Yeah. The price is an important point here. They are disposable. So one trick is to actually destroy them if you are using them for doing.
Does anyone actually control the devices that can be used on the networks? Do you actually control what USB devices can be attached? No?
Our office is enclosed anyway, so it's not a lot of it is some things, more the networking side of things are relevant to us. There's only like me and one other that have access to two computers.
Yeah.
One has accounts on it and one doesn't. So it's sort of split out. But one of the things that we do sometimes, that all the old PCs that we have, I've still got all the hard drives in the loft. We just archive them, just take the hard drives out of the computer and keep them.
We work with a company, and I watched it for the first time the other day, a company that, we'll get on to data destruction, but they shred the drives. Does everyone keep a record of everything they have, asset-wise?
Be an honest man. I'll let you.
Do we all actually keep a record of what's on our networks? So if I came, you would have an asset register of everything on your network. Because it's interesting that wireless technology, fantastic as it is, so many people who are restrained as to what they can and can't access will be plugging in wireless access points on your network. So for whatever purpose, nefarious or otherwise, there'll be whatever your controls you're putting in place, they'll be trying to circumnavigate them.
There was a scam down in London with those, the wireless that hit restaurants. You know the credit card machines?
Yeah.
The ones that you got the wired ones, Bluetooth ones, and the GSM. Well, a lot of the restaurants are using the Bluetooth around the restaurant, and the scam about 6 months ago was happening where a couple would come in, basically sit down at a table and pre-authorise your card, and the waiter or waitress always turns away when you put your PIN number in, and they will swap the machine over, okay, which was then logging on to their Bluetooth. They'd sit there for the whole evening for 5 or 6 hours, have the full works, dinner, cheese, biscuits, what have you. And at the end of the evening, come to pay the bill, the waiter turns away, swap the machines back over again, and they've just lifted all the transactions for the restaurant for the night.
There's some great examples of those man-in-the-middle attacks where people are intercepting. If you want some advice, be very careful using these public Wi-Fi access points. You can readily buy equipment now. If you want to masquerade as a hotspot in a, say, an airport lounge or whatever, and masquerade as, say, BT, if you want, you'll have people connecting to your wireless network. I think it was at InfoSec earlier this year. Within the first hour, 300 people had connected to a fake wireless access wireless network that had been set up.
Yeah, I'm going to just add another one to that one that you mentioned, airports
Yep.
and hotels. The one thing that's been found very interesting recently, the last year or so, is iPhones. People want to jailbreak them, jailbreaking so you can do fancy things with them. Well, most people that do that, unfortunately, aren't aware of the implications of jailbreaking them. So there's a study in a large hotel where they went and looked at the local Wi-Fi and masqueraded as the local Wi-Fi, and then people with their iPhones were coming into the bar and connecting with their iPhones. Well, the jailbroken iPhone, most of the time, depending on how you've done it, but predominantly has got a default username and password on the phone. As soon as you connect a jailbroken iPhone to a network, anyone can take control of that iPhone. And the list was phenomenal. The number of it's illegitimate. You're not meant to jailbreak it, but a lot of people do. They found some vulnerability that they gave themselves, they produced themselves. All their contact details or credit card transactions. They might be booking a flight to get out of that airport on the next day.
It's interesting you mentioned phones. That's
Talking about a question for you, we use BT Internet, business internet, and I found out some time ago that BT, without being sort of completely upfront about it, all BT business internet hubs transmit OpenZone. Okay.
So private one.
Right. So does it therefore follow if they're using your hub as a transmit and receive point for OpenZone, is it giving a vulnerability to you?
they're using separate bandwidth, aren't they, on this BT FON or BT OpenZone? It was enabled by default, I believe, if you went with, but they've now changed that. So it's only if you wish to subscribe and have someone use your broadband connection.
So if they did it up front and gave you the ability to use anything free, if you enable yours to be free, it'd be different, but they don't.
No. No.
I've just got visions of sort of like driving down the road, parking up in the road, and just going down houses, businesses, dresses, like hacking into their computers.
Talking of phones, getting back to this phone issue, have you all changed your voicemail passwords? You're aware of all this phone hacking nonsense that's been going on. I don't know why they call it hacking. I mean, it's not rocket science, is it? You have to know someone's mobile number and then the default password, which is readily available. Anyway, 1234, I think Orange's default password was. Ah, we can find out what your preference is, though, can we? And, start a spear phishing attack.
We've only got about 5 minutes.
Oh, sorry. Right. Data destruction. It might still be common practice to give your PCs usually to a charity or to a school, irrespective of what's on the drives. This was in 2009. 300 hard disk drives were bought on eBay. One of them which contained sensitive information for shooting down intercontinental missiles, as well as bank details, NHS records. The intercontinental missile launch procedures on a hard drive on eBay. Unbelievable. And moving swiftly on. Remote access. We covered two-factor authentication and ensuring that any employee with remote access, it's over a secure medium, a virtual private network. Home workers need to ensure that wireless networks are encrypted to the highest possible standards. WPA2, I suppose, is the highest currently. Staff recruitment. Do we all carry out the usual checks? I don't think so. Credit references, CRB checks. CFAS.
The CRB check is complete and utter waste of time because all that tells is somebody's not in court. It doesn't say somebody's trustworthy.
So tell you they're good at it.
But you're just trying to employ the best, sort of the best possible means of determining. It might put someone off applying for a job or going through with the interview process. If you impose this sort of, are you familiar with the CFAS fraud database?
Yeah, the CFAS, that whole system doesn't work either. I actually paid to the fraud office, the City of London Police actually run it. I 3 goes of credit card people, and I just weren't interested. But a guy who's trying to commit fraud, basically saying put a transaction through, working with you, and then transfer X amount of money to this account. Obviously, I'm not quite as good as that cabbage looking. So I sort of like ran with it, set him up, thinking, oh, well, the police have got this. Okay, I gave him his name, his mobile phone number, 2 UK bank accounts with a bank account name on it, and they weren't interested. If they want to catch somebody physically.
I think there are employment law complications. Bella might well be able to.
Is a CRB check going to do you any good anyway? 'Cause
Probably not.
probably legally not allowed.
But it might act as a deterrent. It might act as a deterrent if this is only a best practices approach. You don't have to do it all.
But I mean, you can have the good and best practice in the world.
Mm.
People will always look and find a way around it.
Yeah.
We're in transport, so for instance, there's a current transport scam going on if you're employing somebody. You've got somebody, and it's ridiculously simple, okay? When you go to a job, you're providing your driving licence, okay? You go through it on the way home from here, you go through the speed camera. Yeah, okay, I'm about to apply for my licence. You basically go online when you get home, you pay your £20, and you order up a duplicate licence. So you've lost yours, okay?
Mm.
You're then sat at home with 2 original driving licences. You produce one to a prospective employer, saying I've got a clean driving licence, and you send one to the court to get your points in it.
I'm definitely not offering you a job. It's about applying a multi-layered defence system. Yeah, the determined perpetrator will always find a way through. How long have we got? Just about done. Email and internet security. I just want to share some statistics with you, and then we'll wrap up. But 70% of all pornographic downloads occur between 9 and 5.
It's always between 9 and 5 somewhere.
Well, yes. Answer that. 25% of employees admit to spending between 10 and 30 minutes a day surfing non-work related sites. 22% admit to spending between 30 minutes and an hour. 12% said they spend between 1 and 2 hours online, and 13% admitted spending more than 2 hours per day visiting non-work related websites. 80% of companies reported that employees had abused internet privileges such as downloading pornography or pirated software. And finally, 46% of online shopping during the Christmas period occurs at work. And that may well be your busiest time of the year if you're an accountant. So, monitor and control.
There are
Yep.
police force recently that got caught out.
Yes. Yep. And there are the risks. I hope it was helpful. It was somewhat disjointed, but I do appreciate the interaction because it makes my life an awful lot easier standing up here and killing people with PowerPoint. Thanks for your time.